Hey there. Tonight we're going somewhere very few eyes have ever seen. Not outer space, not a faraway planet, but down into the planet itself. Into a darkness so absolute, it swallows light whole. You're descending into the abyss, that endless sleeping ocean world below the reach of the sun. You might feel the gentle pull of gravity tugging at your curiosity as much as at your body. Down there, the water isn't just cold, it's ancient. Every drop has been cycling for thousands of years, quietly remembering the warmth of long-lost sunlight. Of course, you probably wouldn't survive this journey awake. The pressure at those depths would flatten you faster than a badly packed sandwich at the bottom of a diving bag. But that's all right. You're here only in spirit, tucked under blankets, floating safely in imagination. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. For now, just breathe. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin your descent from the bright surface, where sunlight sparkles like shattered glass on ripples. The first few meters are familiar bubbles, swaying kelp, darting fish. But as you sink, colors start to fade. Reds vanish first, then oranges, then yellows. After about 100 meters, you realize you're wrapped in blue and green, the last colors brave enough to make it this far. The ocean is layered like a dream unfolding. The top where you started is called the epipelagic zone, the sunlight zone. It's busy, loud, full of life. But you're leaving that behind, slipping into the mesopelagic, the twilight zone. Here, light weakens, temperatures drop, and the water thickens into velvet. You might imagine it as dusk that never ends. A small lanternfish flickers nearby its belly, lined with tiny lights. It's performing one of nature's most subtle tricks, counter-illumination, glowing just enough to match the faint light from above, making itself invisible to predators below. You can't help but admire the ingenuity. The ocean's version of stealth mode. You drift lower, following a slow ballet of descending particles, bits of dead plankton, fish scales, microscopic poop, all tumbling through the dark. Scientists call it marine snow, which sounds romantic, until you realize it's mostly deep-sea leftovers. Still, it's beautiful in a sleepy, cosmic way. You watch it fall endlessly like a lazy winter storm that never reaches the ground. And somewhere up there above, all this sunlight is still dancing on the waves. The photons you once felt on your face are now scattered into nothingness, leaving behind this muted dreamscape. The abyss waits below, silent and patient. You pass a drifting jellyfish the size of a dinner plate. Its slow pulse looks almost meditative. If you listen closely, impossibly closely, you might hear the soft whoosh of its bells contracting. The jelly, it's a ghostly traveler, following invisible ocean currents that carry it through darkness like a feather on wind. Here in this twilight realm, day and night blur together. It's not quite dark, not quite light, a permanent evening. The creatures here depend on rhythm rather than vision. Many rise each night toward the surface to feed, then sink again before dawn. It's the largest migration on Earth, happening every single day, yet most humans have never seen it. You pause, suspended between light and dark. The surface above is just a pale glow now. The pressure is about 10 times what you're used to at sea level. Not enough to crush, but enough to make you aware that the world is wrapping itself around you. It's oddly comforting, like the weight of a heavy blanket. A school of hatchetfish glints below their sides, mirror-slick and metallic. They use their reflective scales as camouflage, blending perfectly with the faint light overhead. One flickers and turns, catching your eye like a dropped coin sinking through water. Scientists still argue whether these reflections count as a form of communication or simply an evolutionary coincidence. Either way, it's mesmerizing. Far above, the last beams of sunlight give up. You've crossed the boundary. The abyss begins here. The ocean becomes a kind of space-silent starless, yet filled with life that glows, clicks, hums, and breathes. You feel tiny and yet somehow part of it. There's a comfort in this smallness, in the idea that even in a place humans can't survive, life still blooms. Not loudly, not extravagantly, but quietly, stubbornly. Like moss in cracks or mushrooms after rain, a gentle current brushes past your face, cold, steady, older than memory. It's a ribbon of water born at the poles, now drifting slowly toward the equator. You could follow it for years and never see the same view twice. Everything here moves in centuries, not seconds. You imagine what it would be like to simply keep sinking, to let the light fade completely, to trust that your body would adapt, that your eyes would learn to read darkness as clearly as daylight. Maybe somewhere deep down, they already can. Another small light flickers in the distance. A single point, pulsing rhythmically. It could be a jellyfish, a squid, or something no one has named yet. Down here, new species appear all the time. Scientists estimate that up to 80% of deep-sea life is still undiscovered. Every dive is a first encounter. You think of how absurdly vast it all is. Over 60% of the planet's surface lies in darkness deeper than 1,000 meters. You're floating inside the largest habitat on Earth, and you're utterly alone, yet surrounded by invisible life. A faint rumble echoes through the water. Maybe it's a distant whale song or a far-off earthquake rolling through the sea floor. Sound travels 5 times faster in water than in air, bending and stretching through the deep like whispers in a dream. You let it pass through you, the rhythm of the ocean heartbeat. The abyss is beginning to open its doors, one quiet layer at a time. The surface world is far behind now. You've crossed the threshold and the deeper mysteries wait below. The light above you fades into a dim blur, and for a moment you can't tell where the water ends and the night begins. You've reached the edge of light, the fragile border between the known and the unknown. Here, the last golden threads of the sun dissolve into deep sapphire, and the world takes on a quiet hush like a theater right before the curtain rises. Your movements feel slower now, thicker, as though the water has turned to glass. You hover in a space that's neither bright nor dark. The mesopelagic zone stretching from about 200 to 1,000 meters deep. Sunlight trickles down here like an exhausted traveler. It's just enough to shape the silhouettes of drifting fish and the faint glint of scales, but not enough for photosynthesis. Plants can't survive here. The ocean itself begins to hum with a different kind of energy. You notice flashes of light, brief and delicate like stars, winking in and out. At first, you think your eyes are playing tricks on you, but then another pulse appears and another. Welcome to bioluminescence, nature's version of neon signage. Nearly 90% of creatures in this zone can produce their own light, and each has its own reason to hunt, to hide, or to flirt. A lanternfish swims past, trailing small dots of blue-white glow along its sides. It's the size of your hand, but holds the confidence of a creature that owns the night. The light is produced by special organs called photophores. filled with chemicals that react like a soft spark when mixed. Some species even use bacteria to do the glowing for them tiny outsourced light bulbs. Scientists still argue whether these bacterial partnerships began by accident or as deliberate cooperation millions of years ago. Either way, it's teamwork that would make any workplace jealous. Nearby, a jellyfish drifts by, its bell transparent as glass. As it pulses forward, rings of light ripple through it, pink turquoise, then violet. You realize the colors shift because there's no true color down here. The deeper you go, the more red disappears first, then orange, then yellow. Only blue survives. That's why so many deep-sea creatures appear blue, silver, or black. They've evolved to match the ocean's last wavelength of light. But there are exceptions. You glimpse something astonishing, a faint red shimmer. A dragonfish. It glides past, long and thin, its fangs glowing scarlet. It shouldn't be possible to see red here. It's the first color filtered out by the water. But the dragonfish can create and see red light invisible to its prey. Imagine having your own private flashlight that no one else can see. The deep sea's version of night vision goggles. You float quietly, watching these little flashes in the dark. They blink, swirl, and fade like an upside-down sky. Somewhere a squid releases a burst of glowing ink, not black, but blue. A glittering smoke screen against predators. You can't help but think it looks like fireworks slowed down to a whisper. A small shape darts through the dim. A bristlemouth, one of the most numerous vertebrates on Earth. There are more of these tiny fish than humans by the hundreds of trillions, yet almost no one has ever seen one alive. Their jaws are lined with sharp, transparent teeth that reflect light like glass. They hang motionless in the water, mouths slightly open, waiting for anything edible to drift close. Efficient, patient, silent. The water around you feels heavier now. The pressure climbs, hundreds of pounds per square inch, pressing in on every direction. If you were physically here, your lungs would collapse long before your thoughts did. But in this sleepy version of the abyss, the weight is only psychological. It's the cozy heaviness of a blanket pulling you deeper into the mattress. You feel cocooned, safe, swaddled by darkness. A faint crackle trickles through the water, an unexpected sound. It's the distant song of a humpback whale vibrating through kilometers of sea. It's so deep, so slow, that you can feel it in your chest before you truly hear it. Down here, sound travels differently, pure, undistorted. Some whales use this twilight zone as a sonic highway, sending songs that can travel halfway across oceans. Scientists still debate whether whales use the deep layers to amplify sound intentionally, or if it's simply a lucky accident of physics. You drift past a colony of siphonophores, long, delicate chains of creatures that work together like organs in a single body. Some parts sting, others glow, others steer. They can grow to be over 100 feet long, longer than the blue whale. You'd never notice one on the surface. They live where light forgets to visit. A curious thought crosses your mind in a place where there's no sunlight, no trees, no birds. Life still finds ways to shine. Literally, it's as if evolution refused to accept darkness as final. You think of city lights viewed from an airplane. Each dot a sign of someone living, thinking, dreaming. Down here, it's the same story, just rewritten in scales and slime. Something flickers below, more rhythmic this time, a gentle pulse, on-off, like a breathing pattern. It's a jellyfish perhaps, or maybe the signal of a small squid using light to confuse predators. Some squid species can even control their glow pixel by pixel flashing patterns like underwater Morse code. You wonder what they're saying, hello danger love, or maybe just, I'm here. The longer you stay, the more the darkness seems alive. It isn't an emptiness, it's a canvas painted with light that moves too slowly to startle you. The creatures glide as though obeying some unspoken rule of quietness. No rushing, no splashing, no sharp edges. Just slow existence. And yet, everything you see is dependent on the surface world above. The twilight zone thrives on the constant rain of organic matter, tiny flecks of once living things drifting downward. Without that, this region would starve. Every glowing creature here is in some way living off the memory of sunlight. A lone hatchetfish drifts by again, its mirrored skin flashing faintly. You almost greet it like an old friend remembering it from your last pause above. Continuity even in chaos. You begin to feel the pull downward again, a gravity not of physics, but of curiosity. The world below is darker still, quieter still. You take one last look upward at the faint shimmer of the surface far above, like a distant galaxy, unreachable and small. Then you let yourself sink slow and calm toward the waiting midnight. The water thickens into velvet. The faint glow from above disappears completely, leaving you suspended in the kind of darkness that feels like it has weight, like it's pressing softly against your eyelids, even when they're open. You've crossed the invisible border into the midnight zone, also called the bathypelagic, a world of eternal night stretching from about 1 to 4 kilometers deep. Here, light doesn't just fade, it dies. Even the sun's most stubborn rays can't survive the pressure or distance. If you held out your hand, you wouldn't see it, not even as a shadow. And yet this isn't emptiness. It's alive. The darkness itself hums with quiet life. Tiny flashes blink in the distance, blue-green, sometimes white-like. The pulse of a giant sleeping city, one that never wakes. A shrimp glows faintly as it drifts by, lighting up the water around it like a dying ember. A small anglerfish hovers close behind its lure, swinging lazily from a filament above its head. The glowing orb at the tip pulses every few seconds, an invitation, a trick, a deadly promise. The anglerfish's mouth opens just a little too wide, revealing a row of needled teeth so thin they disappear when it closes its jaws again. If this were daylight, you might shudder. But here the sight feels peaceful, slow. Everything happens in gentle motion, almost like dreaming underwater. That little glowing orb on the anglerfish's head isn't part of the fish itself. It's a symbiotic bacterium living inside the lure, creating light through a chemical reaction called bioluminescence. The fish gets a nightlight. The bacteria get free housing. Scientists still debate whether the bacteria evolved with the fish or if they were freeloaders that just moved in and stayed forever. Either way, the partnership works. You follow the soft halo of the lure as it fades into the dark. Nearby, something shimmers faintly, thousands of pinpoint lights arranged in lines and spirals. At first, you think it's a jellyfish, but it's a comb jelly, a creature that doesn't technically glow. Instead, it refracts any trace of light, bioluminescent or mechanical, into rainbow streaks across its transparent body. Its movement sends ribbons of color up and down its sides, like a living screensaver. In this silent space, even small things feel monumental. Every flicker becomes a signal, every movement a story. Communication here is light itself. Some fish flash in short bursts to find mates. Others pulse rapidly to confuse predators. There's even a shrimp species, Acanthophyra purpurea, that can vomit glowing mucus to distract attackers. It's gross and spectacular nature's glowing getaway car. If you listen, really listen, there's a sound to this darkness too. The faint creak of distant tectonic plates, the soft rumble of an undersea landslide miles away, and somewhere far off, a deep, resonant boom that you can feel in your chest. It might be a blue whale calling. It might also be gas bubbles escaping from a volcanic vent. Down here, even sound gets strange. It travels in slow rolling waves that twist and bend, turning the whole ocean into an echo chamber. You feel that slow pulse through your body, almost syncing with your breathing. The rhythm becomes hypnotic. Inhale, glow. Exhale, fade. The darkness stops feeling empty and begins to feel safe, like a womb of the planet itself. A long shadow glides past, huge and deliberate. At first, it's nothing more than absence, the suggestion of movement. Then the faint light from a jellyfish reveals a massive form, a sperm whale descending into the deep. Its scarred skin tells stories of old battles with giant squid. It's following the faint traces of their scent, diving for a meal it may or may not find. You can almost sense its slow, powerful heartbeat. It vanishes again within seconds, swallowed whole by the dark. Scientists still argue whether the abyss makes creatures stranger or simply simpler. Some adapt to survive pressure, others to hide, others just endure. Down here, survival doesn't look heroic. It looks quiet, efficient, elegant. You spot something like a slow ribbon unrolling in the distance. It's a gulper eel, its tail glowing faintly at the tip. Its mouth is absurdly large, nearly a third of its entire body. It looks cartoonish, like a mistake evolution forgot to correct. But that mouth can open wide enough to swallow prey larger than itself. Still, it's rarely in a hurry. It drifts with the calm patience of a creature that has never known sunlight and doesn't miss it. Sometimes you get the feeling that the abyss doesn't care if you're here. It doesn't react, doesn't change. It's older than you, older than mammals, older even than trees. You're just a passing thought in its long, slow breathing. The deeper you go, the colder the water becomes, barely above freezing, yet it doesn't freeze. The pressure holds the molecules too tightly together for that. It's one of those beautiful contradictions, ice cold but liquid, silent but alive. Something faint and string-like catches your attention. It's another siphonophore, this one stretching out into the darkness like a strand of fiber optics. Each glowing section is a separate animal, but together they function as one. You think of human cities again. Billions of separate lives forming a single pulse of light seen from space. The darkness flickers again. You see tiny dots blinking on and off rhythmically in every direction. You've entered a living constellation, a gathering of deep-sea plankton, all glowing in unison. Some scientists believe they use these synchronized flashes as protection overwhelming predators with sensory overload. Others think it's just the side effect of chemical reactions triggered by movement. In other words, no one knows. And that's strangely comforting. The deeper you sink, the fewer shapes you can recognize. The creatures here look improvised, half-finished translucent sacs, dangling jaws, bodies that seem to melt into the water. You wonder whether that's ugliness or a new kind of beauty. Maybe when light disappears, aesthetics do too. You pause floating in the middle of infinity. There's no up, no down, just faint light fading into black. You realize you could spin for hours and never find the horizon. The abyss doesn't need direction, it simply is. Somewhere behind you, a small spark ignites. Then another, and another. You turn slowly, realizing it's not random. Something is swimming through the darkness, trailing a comet tail of bioluminescence. A squid, perhaps. It's as if the ocean itself were signing its name in cursive just for you before the ink disappears. The deeper you drift, the more the darkness feels familiar. It's not empty space anymore, it's home. The abyss accepts you without question the way it has accepted everything else for billions of years. And as the last faint glimmer fades behind you, you realize the truth. The deep ocean isn't lifeless. It's just asleep. The deeper you drift, the more you begin to feel the weight of the ocean. It presses in from every direction, softly at first, then insistently like a giant hand reminding you that you're far from the air and light you once knew. Down here, the pressure doesn't simply exist. It becomes a presence, a character in the story. You can almost hear it creaking in the distance, shaping everything that dares to live here. At 3,000 meters deep, the pressure is roughly 300 times greater than at the surface. Every square inch of your body would carry a load of about 400 or 500 pounds. It's not something a human could ever feel and live to describe. If your body were actually here, the air spaces inside you would collapse instantly. Lungs, sinuses, even microscopic bubbles in your blood. Comforting, right? But don't worry, you're traveling as thought and imagination immune to physics tonight. Still, that number 300 atmospheres echoes through your mind. And it raises a strange question: how does anything survive this? The answer drifts all around you. Fish with jelly-like bones, shrimp with flexible shells, creatures whose flesh isn't crushed because it's nearly the same density as the water around them. They don't resist the pressure, they match it. Adaptation through surrender. There's a quiet wisdom in that. Don't fight what you can't escape. Become it instead. A pale shape moves through the darkness, an amphipod, a shrimp-like creature about the size of a fingernail. It's transparent, nearly invisible, and it doesn't seem to mind the crushing force of the deep. Scientists once recovered one of these amphipods from the Mariana Trench, nearly 11,000 meters down. It carried a new kind of molecule in its body, a chemical that prevents its cell membranes from collapsing. The molecule is so effective at countering pressure that biochemists are now studying it to preserve vaccines on Earth's surface. Leave it to a shrimp to solve modern medicine. Another flicker, a long, thin fish with skin as soft as jelly, an abyssal snailfish. It swims with calm indifference, its body gelatinous enough to bend with the pressure rather than break. When researchers finally filmed one alive, they described its motion as graceful surrender. You watch it undulate slowly, its translucent fins barely moving, as though it's being carried by its own stillness. Pressure has done something else to this world. It slowed everything down. No darting, no rushing, no chaotic chases. Just slow breathing, slow drifting, slow life. The metabolism of many deep-sea creatures is glacial. Some eat only a few times a year. Imagine a lifestyle where a single meal lasts you through every season. The ocean doesn't reward haste, it rewards patience. You notice strange tracks in the sediment below, a meandering pattern carved by something small but deliberate. It's the trail of a sea cucumber inching its way through the abyssal plain, vacuuming organic particles from the mud. It's not glamorous work, but someone has to clean up the ocean floor. The sea cucumber, in its quiet way, keeps the ecosystem alive. If reincarnation is real, maybe this would be a peaceful gig. The darkness presses closer, and you realize that the sensation of pressure is oddly comforting. On the surface, you spend your days resisting, fighting gravity deadlines noise. But here, you can't fight. You can only let go. The abyss holds you like a deep, dark, weighted blanket. You think about submarines, those small steel vessels that venture here for science and curiosity. The Trieste, for example, descended to nearly 11 kilometers in 1960. At the bottom, one of its windows cracked under the pressure, though the crew inside stayed calm enough to take notes. They said the view was like looking at an endless desert of light gray silt. It's humbling, the idea that human curiosity pushes us even where our bodies clearly don't belong. But the real explorers are the creatures that live here permanently. The deep-sea snailfish, the giant amphipods, the holothurians, they've never known sunlight, never needed it. Their world is perfect in its stillness. You watch a small cloud of marine snow descend, tiny fragments of dead plankton, fish waste, and organic dust from above. It lands softly on the seafloor like cosmic ash. Each speck carries the memory of the surface, the touch of sunlight, and the warmth of air. Down here, that memory becomes food. Every snowflake is life recycled. A quirky fact drifts to mind: scientists once sent styrofoam cups down with deep-sea probes. When they returned, the cups were shrunk to the size of thimbles, crushed uniformly by the weight of the ocean. Yet deep-sea creatures far more fragile than styrofoam swim here unharmed. It's like watching silk thrive where steel fails. Somewhere nearby, a faint blue spark ignites, bioluminescent bacteria colonizing a decaying fish. In death, the creature becomes a lantern. The glow spreads across its body, and soon the carcass looks like a slow-burning star. It's morbidly beautiful, but also functional, that light attracts scavengers who in turn feed the bacteria again. The abyss wastes nothing. Even endings are beginnings here. You think of how this pressure, this darkness, this unimaginable calm mirrors something internal, the weight of your own world. On the surface, pressure feels like stress. Down here, it feels like stability. Maybe it's not the weight itself, but the way you meet it. The fish don't resist. They flex, flow, adapt. Above you might call that surrender. Down here, it's called homeostasis. A sudden current brushes past cold as stone. It's not random. It's the slow motion of the planet's circulation, vast underwater rivers that link every ocean. The current carries the faintest hint of volcanic minerals and ancient carbon molecules older than humanity. It drifts around you like invisible smoke, tracing paths carved long before humans learned to name them. Pressure is constant here, but so is peace. There are no storms, no tides, no sound of waves breaking. Just the quiet hum of Earth's heartbeat beneath all noise. You realize that life in the abyss isn't fragile, it's perfected. It has adapted to forces we can't even imagine thriving by yielding instead of resisting. Maybe that's what this darkness teaches best, not how to survive in spite of pressure, but how to live because of it. You let that thought settle around you like silt, slow and soft. The crushing weight of the deep doesn't frighten you anymore. It feels like belonging. You drift forward slowly, almost motionless now as the darkness deepens into something thicker, almost syrupy. The light has completely surrendered, and yet the water seems to shimmer with its own quiet motion. You can sense it. The ocean is not still. It moves with a purpose too vast and too slow for the human body to perceive. You've entered the realm of the deep currents, at the invisible highways of the abyss. Down here, far below, any surface wind or tide, enormous rivers of water, flow endlessly across the seafloor. They're called thermohaline currents, driven by differences in temperature and salt. Each molecule of this cold, heavy water sinks near the poles, travels across the globe like a sleepy pilgrim, and rises again centuries later somewhere else entirely. Some of the water you touch right now might not see daylight again for 1,000 years. Imagine that one drop living longer than an empire. The current brushes past you gently, but it carries a hidden power. It's moving mountains of water with the energy of 10,000 rivers combined. It's also carrying secrets, nutrients, carbon, tiny drifting embryos, the dust of long-ago volcanoes. You can almost imagine each molecule whispering, "I've seen things." A strand of transparent mucus drifts by, an elaborate structure called a giant Larvacean house. It's built by a creature no larger than your pinky, a tadpole-shaped animal that constructs massive fragile bubbles of mucus to filter the water around it. Every time the filter clogs, it simply abandons it and builds another. The discarded houses sink to the seafloor, becoming food for the abyss. It's a cosmic version of cleaning out your inbox, except every email becomes dinner. You realize that the entire deep ocean operates like this one slow, continuous recycling of energy and matter. Nothing is wasted. Everything drifts, transforms, and continues. Even the bones of whales that fall from above become ecosystems of their own, hosting bacteria, snails, and worms that feed on their decay for decades. It's called a whale fall, and it's one of the rare feasts of the abyss. Scientists once found over 200 species living on a single whale carcass, life built on death in the gentlest possible way. The current grows colder as you descend with it, tracing its invisible path. You pass a faint shimmer of particulate matter, tiny flakes of calcium carbonate, glinting like distant stars. Each flake is a microfossil, the shell of a plankton that lived millions of years ago, eroding gently into dust. You can't help but smile at the idea that you're surrounded by the remains of ancient life, still moving, still giving. A faint, rhythmic hum begins to pulse through the water. You tilt your head. It's not mechanical, not a whale, but something subtler. It's a sound of earthquakes rippling through the sea floor. The ocean carries them like songs, low-frequency vibrations that can travel for thousands of kilometers. Some scientists believe deep-sea animals can sense these tremors long before we can detect them on land. Others think the creatures don't even notice. Either way, the abyss listens to the planet more closely than we ever could. Somewhere above the surface world is alive, with storms, rain, and sunlight. But none of that matters here. The deep currents move at their own pace, calm, patient, ancient. You imagine them as the planet's circulatory system, carrying warmth, oxygen, and life itself through its veins. Without them, the Earth's climate would collapse. Yet no one sees them directly. They are ghosts doing quiet, crucial work. A tiny fish flits past, a viperfish perhaps, or something stranger. Its body glows faintly blue, and you notice the faint glimmer of teeth that look too large for its jaw. It hovers just long enough to watch you back. You imagine it thinking another drifting thing. Then it vanishes into the dark. You're beginning to feel the scale of the abyss now, not just its size, but its tempo. Everything moves here, but on the time scale of centuries. The water you're floating in might have started its journey before humanity built its first city, and it will keep flowing long after every city is dust. There's something comforting about that, a sense that Earth doesn't rush and neither should you. As you drift deeper, the current widens into a broad, slow river, hugging the contours of the seafloor. It carries you past towering ridges and ancient canyons carved by landslides older than mammals. Occasionally, you spot a small swirl of silt, a whisper of turbulence from a boulder, rolling lazily along the bottom. Even in the abyss, gravity never sleeps. You think about how scientists still struggle to map these deep currents. They deploy floating sensors, little glass orbs that drift for years, quietly sending whispers of data to satellites whenever they surface. Some have traveled entire oceans before being recovered. And yet, despite all this, most of the abyss remains unmapped. The deep currents are like the subconscious mind of the planet, vast, mysterious, and quietly in control. A small joke drifts through your tired mind. If the ocean had thoughts, these currents would be its dreams. Slow looping, always returning to themselves. And maybe you're drifting in one right now, a thought the ocean forgot to wake from. The current shifts, carrying a faint warmth. It's subtle, almost imperceptible, but you sense it, a pulse of energy rising from deep within the earth. That's the next layer of your journey, calling hydrothermal vents, where the seafloor itself breathes. You can almost smell the minerals, the iron and sulfur carried upward through cracks in the crust. Scientists still argue about how much of the ocean's chemistry comes from these vents versus the surface world above. Some believe the abyss is largely self-sustaining, an isolated engine of life, powered from below. Others insist it's still dependent on the rain of sunlight, fed life from above. Like most deep debates, the truth probably lies somewhere in between, drifting slowly with the currents. You let the thought wash over you, the way the water does, constant, unhurried, timeless. The currents move on, and you move with them, a single particle in the ocean's endless inhale and exhale. For the first time tonight, you realize that you're not just sinking anymore, you're traveling. Not falling, but flowing. The ocean is carrying you where it wants you to go, like a lullaby written in salt and time. The faint warmth grows stronger, and you see a dull red flicker on the horizon of the abyss. Not sunlight. Something older, more secret. You drift toward it. The dim red flicker becomes clearer now, spreading like a slow pulse through the heavy black water. You drift closer until the darkness breaks suddenly before you. The seafloor glows as if someone has lit a fire in the underworld. Great chimneys of rock rise from the ground, billowing clouds of shimmering minerals. These are hydrothermal vents, the ocean's hidden forges, where the planet breathes heat and metal into the deep. You hover above a towering black smoker, a column of superheated water blasting from the crust. It's nearly 400 degrees Celsius down there, hot enough to melt lead, yet somehow it doesn't boil, crushed under the immense pressure of the abyss. The plume spirals upward like a ghostly torch full of minerals that glitter in your light. Tiny snowflakes of iron and sulfur swirl through the water, drifting like ash. It's strange to think that this hellish landscape is home to some of the most peaceful creatures on Earth. Tube worms, ghostly white and swaying like underwater grass, cling to the rocks. They have no mouths, no stomachs. Instead, they host symbiotic bacteria that feed on the chemicals spewing from the vents. These bacteria perform chemosynthesis, turning toxic gases into lifelike plants, making food from poison instead of sunlight. You can almost hear the gentle hiss of the vent, the low hum of creation. If the ocean had a heartbeat, it would sound like this: steady, deep, eternal. You drift a little closer and notice a small cluster of shrimp, and their bodies translucent and flickering with bioluminescent sparks. These are Rimicaris shrimp, a species that lives only near vents. Their backs are coated with special bacteria that actually feed them. It's a bit like carrying your own portable kitchen everywhere you go. Efficient, if slightly gross. A faint glow ripples across the vent field, a pattern almost like Morse code. You blink, wondering if your eyes are playing tricks. But no, it's real. The light is coming from bioluminescent microbes dancing in the current, responding to the chemical plumes. It's a silent conversation written in flashes and flickers unseen by human eyes until just a few decades ago. Scientists still argue whether these light patterns serve communication camouflage or simple chemical coincidence. The truth remains buried like most things down here. As you drift over the vent, your skin tingles, not from heat, but from the vibration of the water. You're close to the crust now, and the earth itself hums beneath you. The hydrothermal system is part of a massive network that circles the planet, the mid-ocean ridge, over 60,000 kilometers long. It's the world's largest mountain range, though almost no one ever sees it. Molten rock oozes up slowly through cracks in the seafloor, creating new crust in an eternal cycle of birth and subduction. You are literally floating above Earth's growing edge. You think back to the early Earth billions of years ago, when these vents might have been the cradle of life itself. Some researchers believe that the first living cells formed right here in the mineral pores of vent chimneys. The theory goes that the chemistry between seawater and hot vent fluids created a natural reactor one that could have sparked the first metabolism. Others argue that life began in shallow pools warmed by the sun. Still, the idea that life began in the dark is poetic in its own way. The abyss as mother, not monster. You notice something else drifting near the vent field, a strange jelly shaped like a bell with a delicate fringe of tentacles. It pulses slowly, elegantly, and every few seconds it releases a blue flash that travels along its body like a ripple of lightning. It's called a comb jelly, though it's not really a jellyfish at all. Its light show is produced by tiny crystal plates that scatter reflections, not chemicals. You watch it drift past a floating chandelier, utterly indifferent to your awe. A few meters away, a pale crab scuttles across the vent's crust. Its claws are covered in fuzzed tiny colonies of bacteria that help it process its food. The deep sea really has a thing for outsourcing digestion. You chuckle softly, the sound lost in the current. Down here, everything depends on something else, and nothing wastes a single nutrient. You realize that this entire ecosystem exists without sunlight. It doesn't need the surface at all. Life here runs on chemical energy, feeding off the Earth's heat instead of the sky's light. It's a quiet rebellion against everything you learned in school about the food chain. And somehow, that feels comforting proof that even in total darkness, the universe finds ways to keep going. The vents hiss around you, exhaling streams of minerals that look like smoke, but are really clouds of metal. The smell, if you could smell it, would be sharp and sulfurous like burned eggs and iron. You imagine the water sizzling with unseen reactions, each bubble of gas a tiny experiment in geology and biology. You drift upward, leaving the vent field behind, and look down. From above, the plumes look like black flowers blooming from the stone, each petal curling upward into nothing. A stray thought crosses your mind. If the ocean has gardens, these are its volcano gardens, thriving in the most impossible soil. You pass through another layer of faint light, this time natural luminescence from countless tiny organisms stirred by the vent currents. Each flash feels like a heartbeat, slow and irregular. It's as if the abyss itself is breathing, exhaling warmth into the cold. You breathe with it deep and steady. As the glow fades, you look back one last time. The vents glimmer faintly in the distance, a reminder that life's roots are not in comfort, but in heat, pressure, and persistence. The Earth's crust shifts gently beneath them, moving continents above and birthing life below. A final plume rises, curling into the blackness above you, carrying its minerals upward to feed the drifting life far away. The abyss is an ecosystem of generosity, each layer feeding the next. Even the smallest vent worm is part of something planetary. And as you move away, a calm realization settles in down here where the world was once molten, and wild peace has taken root. Life didn't just endure, it flourished. Maybe that's what the ocean's whisper means, this endless hum beneath the pressure that survival can be quiet, graceful, and ancient. The water cools again as you drift from the warmth of the vents. Ahead, the landscape changes once more. The ridges fall away into a vast plain of fine sediment, the abyssal plain, the largest continuous habitat on Earth. Flat, silent, and waiting. The warmth fades completely, now replaced by the still chill of open abyssal plain. It stretches in every direction, vast, pale gray mudflat, as far as you can see. If the hydrothermal vents were the planet's beating heart, this plain is its sleeping body. You drift above it slowly, weightless, as though you're floating across the skin of another world. Down here, 4 kilometers beneath the surface, everything feels suspended in time. The fine sediment below you has been accumulating grain by grain for millions of years. Microscopic skeletons of plankton dust, blown from deserts' volcanic ash, the faint residue of all things that have ever lived and died above. Every inch of it is a record of the planet's memory. Scientists have pulled up cores from this mud that tells stories reaching back 60 million years. The layers are so delicate that each centimeter can hold centuries of quiet history. You glide lower and watch as a small disturbance curls across the seafloor, a ripple in the fine dust. It's a sea cucumber slowly grazing. These creatures are the janitors of the abyss, endlessly recycling detritus into new life. They move so gently, it's hard to tell where one ends and the sediment begins. Some species actually walk on tiny tentacles, like sleepy sausages doing yoga. Others expel glowing blue mucus when disturbed an unexpected display from such docile beings. A pale starfish sits nearby, motionless but watchful. You realize it's not just sitting, it's digesting its meal outside its body, a neat evolutionary trick. It extrudes its stomach onto the sediment, dissolving whatever organic crumbs it finds. Efficient, if a little gross. You can't help but smirk. Even in the dark, nature finds creative ways to get lunch. Above you, translucent worms float lazily, trailing delicate threads that glimmer like spider silk. They're called polychaetes, and many of them glow when disturbed. You watch one pulse faintly pink and vanish into the mud, leaving only a faint trace of bubbles. The abyss doesn't rush anything, not even magic. The stillness down here is deceptive. Though it seems silent, the abyssal plain is one of the most active ecosystems on Earth. Every day, a slow rain of dead plankton fish scales fecal pellets and tiny organic fragments, collectively known as marine snowfalls from the upper ocean. You watch it drifting through the beam of your light, a constant, delicate snowfall that never ends. It takes weeks, even months, for a single flake to fall from the surface to this depth. And when it lands, it becomes someone's meal. Nothing goes to waste. Somewhere nearby, a strange flicker of motion catches your eye. It's faint but rhythmic. You turn toward it and see a faintly glowing mound, barely a hill rising from the seafloor. At first, you think it's a trick of the light, but then the mound shifts slightly. It's alive. A giant xenophyophore, a single-celled organism the size of a dinner plate built from sediment glued together with secretions. It's one of the largest single cells on Earth, and it looks like a patch of wet lace. Scientists still argue whether xenophyophores are a sign of primitive complexity or something else entirely life that evolved sideways, not upward. Either way, it's quietly stunning. You float above it, mesmerized. One cell capable of surviving pressures that would crush a submarine. It filters organic matter from the water with the patience of a saint. You can't help thinking it must be the ocean's version of meditation, absorbing, processing, never rushing. A few meters away, you notice a half-buried object that doesn't belong here. A long cylinder rusted and coated with slime. It's an old telecommunication cable, one of thousands that cross the seafloor connecting continents. Even here, miles deep in eternal darkness, humanity has left its faint, tangled handwriting. The abyss keeps it, though. It doesn't judge. The cable hums faintly, carrying messages, arguments, and emojis from one side of the world to the other. Down here, it's just another line in the mud. You pass a small rise in the seafloor and find yourself face to face with a Dumbo octopus. Its fins resemble ears flapping slowly like a sleepy cartoon elephant. It hovers curious but unafraid. You tilt your head. It does too. For a moment, it feels like you're both floating in the same thought. Then, as gently as it appeared, it drifts backward, folds its fins, and vanishes into the dark. You feel oddly lighter for having seen it. There's something comforting about this vast emptiness. The abyssal plane doesn't demand attention, it simply is. Life here is deliberate, steady, and minimal. Energy is scarce, so everything moves slowly, conserving effort. A deep sea fish might live for decades. Some sponges are thought to be thousands of years old. Down here, time stretches until it almost stops. Scientists once found a glass sponge colony estimated to be over 10,000 years old, alive since the last ice age. You imagine it now somewhere far out of sight, filtering the same quiet water, day after day. No hurry, no sound, just being. You start to feel the rhythm of the place, slow, repetitive, peaceful. Every heartbeat seems to echo through your body like a soft drum. The water presses against you, gently steady and cool. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of the Earth's rotation hums faintly through the currents. It's strange to think that almost no sunlight has ever touched this place. Yet it covers over half of the planet's surface. The abyssal plane is the true face of Earth, unseen by almost everyone. If aliens ever visited and mapped the planet, they'd probably think this gray, endless seafloor was our natural state. And maybe they'd be right. Everything else is just decoration floating on top. You drift lower, watching the marine snow settle softly like dust on an ancient library shelf. Every particle is a story, every grain a tiny echo of something that once lived. The abyss collects them all patiently. You smile at the thought. The ocean, the greatest archivist in existence. Somewhere beneath you, those layers of sediment quietly record every season, every volcanic eruption, every extinction event. Nothing is lost here. It all just drifts downward and finds its place. And just when you think you've seen all that, the plane has to offer you spot a faint shimmer ahead, a rise in the seafloor darker than the mud around it. It looks unnatural, almost geometric. You approach slowly, your light sweeping across its surface. It's a mound of rock, a ridge perhaps. But as you draw closer, you see faint lines that look like walls' corners and shapes that shouldn't exist this deep. You pause, your breath shallow. The abyssal plain might not be as empty as you thought. You hover motionless for a moment, letting your eyes adjust to the faint glimmer ahead. The ridge rises slowly from the mud, broad and angular, too regular to be random, too deliberate to be natural. It looks like something once built, then swallowed by time and pressure. You drift closer, your light tracing the contours of broken columns and collapsed edges. The abyss seems to hold its breath. What you're looking at could be anything, a geological formation shaped by currents and earthquakes, or the remnants of an ancient volcanic structure. But there's something unsettling about its symmetry, the way the stones line up just so, forming a pattern that seems intentional. You can't help but think of the legends, those half-whispered stories about lost continents like Atlantis or Lemuria swallowed by the sea. Scientists scoff, of course. There's no evidence of such civilizations beneath the waves. And yet here you are staring at something that doesn't fit neatly into the textbooks. A wry smile crosses your face. You remind yourself that the ocean loves to play tricks on perception. Basalt columns can form perfect hexagons. Landslides can shape geometric ridges. The earth is an artist of illusions, especially down here, where the rules blur and the imagination takes over. Still, you can't shake the feeling that these stones remember something. Your light glances off a smooth surface, revealing faint etchings, lines that look like writing or maybe just the scratches of shifting rock. A small current stirs a cloud of silt, and the carvings vanish as if embarrassed to be seen. You laugh quietly, the sound tiny and absurd in the crushing dark. The abyss is a prankster, and you're its favorite audience. Scientists have found mysterious structures like these before: massive terraces off the coast of Japan, strange stepped plateaus near Cuba and the Azores. Most are natural, sculpted by tectonic activity or ancient wave erosion before they sank. But that doesn't stop the speculation. Even now, geologists still debate whether the Yonaguni Monument near Okinawa is man-made or the product of fracturing stone. You could say the jury's been deliberating for about 10,000 years. You move along the ridge, tracing its length. Tiny creatures have made homes in every crevice: white crabs, translucent worms, small glowing amphipods. Life doesn't care who built it, it just moves in. It's funny how quickly nature reclaims everything. Even if this were once an altar or an ancient city, it's now just another reef, quietly pulsing with oxygen and decay. A faint tremor rolls through the water, soft, like distant thunder. The ridge creaks, a low groan you can feel more than hear. Somewhere deep below, tectonic plates shift against one another. The Earth's crust is always moving, always restless. You imagine it stretching and cracking, continents drifting like slow rafts. The ocean floor itself is young in geologic time, constantly renewed, constantly swallowed. Maybe whatever once stood here didn't sink, maybe it was recycled. You float over a small pit filled with black sand, and your light catches something unexpected, a glint of metal. Not shiny like gold, but dull and weathered like a forgotten relic. You move closer. It's a sphere half buried, coated in manganese nodules. They grow painfully slow millimeters per million years. That means this object, whatever it is, has been here an unimaginably long time. Scientists once thought manganese nodules could be the key to future mining rich in cobalt and nickel. But they're so fragile that even a passing current can destroy their slow work. Down here, patience is everything. The sphere shifts slightly, stirred by your movement. For a second, you imagine it's looking back at you. A deep-sea relic or a trick of geology, it doesn't matter. Everything in the abyss feels alive, even the stones. You drift higher to take in the entire formation. From above, it looks almost like a city flattened by time rows of shapes, a faint grid, and a central rise that could be a tower or a chimney. It's eerie and beautiful, and somehow it feels lonely. Maybe because it reminds you of yourself, just a small, curious thing adrift in something incomprehensibly large. A small rat-tail fish appears out of the gloom, its long whip-like tail undulating slowly. It circles the ruins, once then disappears into the dark. You envy its calm acceptance of this place. No wonder ancient sailors filled their maps with sea monsters. In the deep, imagination is the only light that travels far enough. You run your hand along a slab of stone. The texture is smooth-layered, almost glassy. Could it be basaltic glass, formed from lava cooling instantly? In seawater, probably. That would explain the clean angles and flat surfaces. The scientist in you nods, the dreamer sighs. Still, both agree, it's beautiful. The ridge slopes downward into a crevice where the mud swirls in slow eddies. You follow, feeling the current tug you deeper. The seafloor drops suddenly, and you realize the ridge is actually the edge of an abyssal trench, one of those enormous scars where tectonic plates dive beneath each other. Below you lies darkness that makes this place look like shallow water. The pressure doubles, then triples. You breathe slowly. Down here, the ocean floor falls away for miles. It's the Mariana Trench kind of depth, though this isn't that exact spot. There are dozens of trenches like it around the world, deep, silent, and only partially explored. The Challenger Deep and the lowest known point reaches nearly 11 kilometers down. Scientists have visited it fewer times than the moon. Some say we know Mars better than we know our own abyss. They're not wrong. You hang there at the edge, looking down into nothing. The city behind you fades into shadow, reclaimed by distance and disbelief. Maybe it was just a coincidence of rock and imagination. Or maybe it was a memory too old for human time. Either way, it's gone now, swallowed by silt. The abyss keeps its secrets. A faint glow rises from below, a thin, soft light, shifting colors from blue to green to violet. You tilt your head, squinting. It's not volcanic. It's alive. Thousands of tiny dots flicker like distant lanterns, swirling together in slow spirals. The deep-sea creatures of the trench have come out, each one carrying its own small lamp in the dark. You let yourself sink toward them, mesmerized. The lost city disappears completely above you. And once again, you are just a drifting thought, sinking into the oldest quiet the planet has ever known. You drift downward into the glowing cloud, surrounded by drifting lights that pulse in every hue the human eye can register, and a few it probably can't. They aren't stars, though. It feels like you've fallen into a galaxy. Each point of light belongs to a creature alive and softly swimming in its own small orbit. The deeper you sink, the more luminous the world becomes, as if the ocean is reversing the logic of night The darker it gets, the brighter life decides to shine. Welcome to the realm of bioluminescence, the deep ocean's silent fireworks. Here, more than 90% of animals create light in some form. Chemical lanterns evolved for survival, romance, or confusion. You glide through clouds of plankton that flash when disturbed, bursts of green and blue that trail behind you like a comet tail. A school of lanternfish darts past each one, carrying a row of glowing dots along its belly. For them, it's camouflage. When predators below look up, their light blends perfectly with a faint shimmer from above. Nature's version of stealth mode. A small jellyfish drifts past your face, turning itself inside out as it pulses. Its fringe glows and waves pink to violet, then clear again. You think of carnival rides and city lights, and how strange it is that the same patterns appear at the bottom of the sea. You could almost believe the ocean is showing off, painting its own aurora borealis far below the sky. Somewhere nearby, a hatchetfish glints, a thin mirror-scaled predator, no longer than your finger. It flashes, then vanishes, its light extinguished as fast as a blink. These fish can control their glow like a dimmer switch, deciding how bright or faint to appear. Scientists believe they do it to disappear, to match the background light and erase their shadows. A perfect invisibility trick perfected long before cloaking devices were just sci-fi ideas. You turn slowly, caught in a slow swirl of bioluminescent haze. A cloud of dinoflagellates bursts in shimmering blue as your hand brushes the water. Each flash is a chemical reaction, luciferin meeting oxygen, sparked by the enzyme luciferase. It's the same kind of reaction that lights up fireflies in the forest. You smile at the thought that two completely different worlds share the same secret chemistry for beauty. Further below, something larger glows faintly red. You blink, unsure. Most deep sea light is blue or green, the colors that travel farthest through water. But this glow is crimson, subtle and deliberate. You drift closer and catch sight of a slow-moving predator, the dragonfish. Its long, slender body undulates like a shadow. Along its jaw hang barbel-like lures tipped with red light. Most deep-sea creatures can't even see red, which means the dragonfish can hunt invisibly using light no one else can detect. You feel a shiver of admiration, stealth technology built into a mouth full of needle teeth. The dragonfish tilts its headlight, fading to nothing, and disappears into the void. Only a faint red spark remains where its lure had been. The abyss goes silent again, save for the faint clicks and pulses of distant creatures communicating. That's one of the strangest things about this world, communication without sound. Many bioluminescent animals use light to signal flashes for mating, steady glow for warnings, synchronized pulses for coordination. There are even deep-sea squid species that can talk using patterns across their skin, changing color and intensity, faster than any human strobe light. Scientists still argue whether these are true languages or just instinctive signals like blinks and shrugs of the deep. Either way, it's conversation made of light, and somehow that feels deeply poetic. A long ribbon-like creature appears beside you, an oarfish, the rumored serpent of sailor tales. Its metallic body shimmers with silver-blue ripples, and along its spine a crimson fin undulates like a banner. You realize how myths were born. Seen from above, distorted through waves, this elegant creature would look like a dragon. You grin, whispering into the dark. So that's where you've been hiding. The oarfish continues on its endless glide, disappearing with the calm of something that has never once cared about the surface world's opinion. The water thickens as you go deeper, colder and heavier. Yet the light show continues flickering all around like fireflies in slow motion. You pass by a small cluster of glowing spheres larvae of anglerfish, each carrying a built-in light organ already at work. They'll spend years growing before settling near the seafloor, where they'll develop the infamous lure, a bioluminescent bulb dangling from their heads like a fishing rod. The light attracts prey, and the teeth do the rest. It's macabre, yes, but also ingenious. And then there's the really strange part, their mating. Male anglerfish are tiny, barely a tenth the size of females. When a male finds one, he bites her and fuses to her body, merging their tissues. Over time, he becomes little more than an attached pair of gonads sharing her bloodstream. It's commitment in its most literal form. You can't help but laugh quietly, imagining someone pitching that love story as a romantic comedy. As you descend further, you pass through layers of water that shimmer faintly like fog. Scientists call them deep, scattering layers, dense bands of small creatures that reflect sonar. To submarines, they look like the seafloor, rising and falling daily. Every evening, these animals migrate upward to feed near the surface, then sink back down before dawn. It's the largest daily migration on Earth, billions of bodies moving silently through the dark. And yet most humans never even know it's happening. You pause, letting the thought settle the ocean is alive in ways that are constant, rhythmic, and invisible. You are surrounded by motion that never stops, by lives that flicker and vanish without sound or trace. It feels both humbling and soothing, like hearing the planet breathe. Something flickers near your shoulder, a small jellyfish with a spiral of golden light along its bell. It spins lazily, then bursts in a final flash before fading away. A single spark born and gone in seconds. You realize that's what most of the abyss is built on. Brief moments of brightness surrounded by eternity. As the last of the glow fades, the water begins to feel heavier again. The lights above dim, the shimmer below strengthens. The temperature drops another few degrees. Ahead, a faint shifting movement catches your eye, something vast and slow-moving, with impossible grace. Not glowing, but outlined by the faint bioluminescent snow it disturbs. It's large, too large to comprehend at first, and it moves like a whisper. You squint into the dark, realizing the truth. You've met one of the giants of the trench. It takes your mind a few seconds to grasp the size of what you're seeing. The shadow ahead glides through the dark vast as an aircraft, yet moving with a grace that defies logic. At first, you think it's a drifting submarine, but then it flexes slow and deliberate, sending a soft current your way. That's no machine. That's a living creature, a giant squid. Its tentacles extend outward like pale ribbons, each one lined with suction cups the size of your palms. The great mantle undulates, propelling it forward without a sound. Its eyes, enormous, dark as oil wells, reflect a faint shimmer of nearby bioluminescent plankton. Those eyes are the largest of any creature on Earth, up to the size of a dinner plate. They evolved to detect the faintest glimmers of movement in the blackness. A distant whale's approach, a shimmer of prey, or perhaps you staring awestruck into the void. You watch it twist slowly, its tentacles curling like smoke. For centuries, sailors spoke of this creature as myth. The Kraken destroyer of ships, devourer of men. But the truth, like most truths of the abyss, is quieter and more melancholy. The giant squid is shy reclusive, a ghost that almost never leaves its dark cathedral. Its only real enemy is the sperm whale, another titan of the deep. Their battles leave scars on both. Ring-shaped welts on the whales, torn limbs on the squid. Even now, scientists still argue whether the two actively hunt each other or simply cross paths in desperate survival. You drift parallel to the creature, following the slow rhythm of its motion. For something so large, it moves with the calm certainty of an old soul. Its skin shimmers faintly with chromatophore cells that can change color, though down here there's no reason to. It's an ancient reflex left over from shallower ancestors, like a memory that evolution hasn't quite forgotten. A passing current pushes you closer, and for a moment you find yourself near its eye. The great orb regards you, not with curiosity or fear, but with the unbothered stillness of a being that's seen everything and judged nothing. You realize oddly how soothing that is. Down here there's no malice, only existence, only motion. The squid tilts downward and vanishes into the dark, disappearing so completely that you almost question whether it was ever there. You're left with a faint cloud of drifting plankton illuminated by distant glimmers. It feels like watching a candle snuff itself out in a cathedral too large to echo. A soft vibration hums through the water, low, slow, almost rhythmic, like the sound of a whale's heart pulsing miles away. The abyss, it turns out, isn't silent at all. It's full of long-distance conversations, low-frequency calls, seismic clicks, tremors through the sea floor. You're hearing the great sperm whales, deep-diving mammals that can reach depths of more than 2 kilometers in search of squid. Their skulls are built to amplify those clicks, each one a sonar pulse used to find prey in total darkness. Some calls are louder than a jet engine, yet muffled by distance, they come to you now as a heartbeat. Steady, slow, and strangely comforting. You imagine one nearby suspended in the dark like a drifting mountain. Its head enormous, its lungs collapsed under pressure, its ribcage compressed like folded wings. It hunts using sound alone, locking onto the faint echo of a squid's motion. When it strikes it, opens its mouth and draws in a rush of cold black water, hoping the shadow inside is food and not another echo. A quirky theory, one scientists still debate, suggests that the scars on whales aren't just from combat, but from courtship. Some believe males show off their battle marks like trophies, proof of their bravery in the hunt. You smirk softly at the idea of a 50-ton whale flirting by flexing its tentacle scars. Deep sea dating, it seems, is as dramatic as it gets. Further below, the light dims again until there's nothing but faint particulate drifting like snow. It's the marine snow, the endless fall of organic dust, dead plankton, and tiny fragments of life cascading down from the surface. This soft rain never stops. It feeds everything that can't reach the sun. A jellyfish might drift through it, mouth open, collecting flakes of ancient recycled matter. Yesterday's life feeding tomorrow's. There's a poetic stillness to it, the thought that even in death, the surface world nourishes the depths. Somewhere in this snow are traces of every living thing that's ever floated above. Algae, scales, bits of shell, microscopic fragments of trees, and maybe even particles of human origin. You're literally breathing through a chain of shared existence that stretches back millions of years. As you move lower still, you start to notice stranger silhouettes. Transparent creatures shaped like ribbons and umbrellas, some pulsing like living glass. others simply drifting half invisible. One resembles a chandelier made of ice. Another looks like a swirling ghost with no fixed shape at all. You're in the mid-trench zone now, where pressure is measured in tons per square inch, and life has to play by new rules. One creature floats by its body, filled with small orbs that reflect the faintest trace of light. A ctenophore, or comb jelly. It moves by refracting light through rows of tiny hairs, creating shimmering rainbows, even in the darkness. No one's entirely sure why. Some scientists think it's for communication. Others say it's just physics. Light bending off tiny beating cilia. But the result is mesmerizing, a living prism, turning darkness into color, for no one but itself. You watch it drift entranced until it fades away like a spark in slow motion. Nearby, a strange translucent tube wiggles past. The giant siphonophore, one of the longest creatures ever found. Some reach over 100 feet long, rivaling blue whales, yet they aren't a single organism at all. Each segment is an individual, a clone specialized for a single task. Some for swimming, some for feeding, some for reproduction. Together, they form a colonial superorganism, drifting as one. It's a reminder that individuality is just a convenient illusion. Down here, teamwork means survival. A soft current brushes against you, carrying the faint vibration of movement, perhaps another whale or something stranger. A shape passes in the dark, vast and formless. You catch a flash of smooth gray skin, a broad fin. Could it be a colossal shark, the megamouth perhaps? A reclusive filter feeder discovered by accident when one was caught in a naval anchor chain in 1976. Since then, only a handful have been seen alive. Scientists still argue whether it's common but shy or simply a relic, a ghost from another era that never got the memo about extinction. It glides by massive and serene, its mouth open to filter plankton from the dark water. You feel the displaced current against your face, a silent exhale of ancient life. It's humbling. All these giants moving unseen beneath the waves, while humanity stares at the surface, busy counting stars instead of shadows. The megamouth fades, replaced by the soundless glitter of falling snow. You hover alone again, suspended in the space between pressure and stillness. Around you, every creature glows, pulses, or hums in its own rhythm, creating a symphony that never touches air. You realize that the abyss isn't empty. It's full of presence, of history, of quiet persistence. Each flicker of light, each heartbeat of a whale, each drifting snowflake of plankton is part of the same deep, eternal breath. You're deep enough now that sunlight isn't even a rumor. The world above has ceased to exist, and you're surrounded by pressure so immense it could crush a steel sphere flat. Yet somehow life goes on. You can almost hear it. Slow pulses, soft vibrations, quiet flickers of persistence. You've crossed into the abyssal plain, a landscape so vast and empty it makes deserts look crowded. The seafloor appears gradually like dawn in reverse. It isn't sand, but fine silt, centuries of drifting snow settling into a thick carpet. It moves when you move, little eddies swirling around your hands. For a moment, you're hovering over an alien desert of darkness, and yet it feels strangely peaceful. A quiet that hums, a stillness that vibrates with distant life. Small white forms creep along the surface. Sea cucumbers, soft-bodied creatures shaped like sluggish sausages, inching along on tiny tube feet. They're the recyclers of the abyss, swallowing sediment, digesting whatever organic matter it contains, and leaving tidy trails behind them. You watch one pause and flex its translucent skin, revealing faint flashes of bioluminescent blue. Even scavengers here can't resist a little style. Further ahead, a cluster of brittle stars fans out like a tangle of roots. Their arms twist delicately, each one capable of sensing movement, light, and chemical traces. You think about how these creatures have no centralized brain. Their entire bodies are awareness, a kind of distributed consciousness. Scientists still argue whether that qualifies as intelligence or something older, stranger, and beyond what we'd recognize as thought. You drift past them, and the seafloor slopes downward again. The temperature drops further, just above freezing, but not quite. At these depths, the difference between cold and impossible is only a fraction of a degree. Tiny amphipods scatter as you pass. Shrimp-like scavengers that feast on whatever the abyss provides: fish bones, whale falls, even the odd piece of plastic drifting down from above. Yes, even here the fingerprints of humanity are faintly visible, tangled in the endless snow. You sigh softly, bubbles streaming upward like silver pearls that will never reach the surface. There's something bittersweet about it, how even the purest places are brushed by the careless traces of our species. But then life adapts. It always does. A faint mound ahead catches your attention, a whale fall. You approach slowly. The massive skeleton lies half buried in silt, its shape barely discernible, like a sunken cathedral. Around it swarms an entire city of creatures: worms, snails, hagfish, and ghostly eelpouts, all feasting in slow motion. Whale falls are miracles of decay. One carcass can feed the deep for decades. First come the scavengers: sharks, hagfish, amphipods, stripping flesh until only bone remains. Then the ossidax worms, also known as bone-eating snot flowers, take over. They dissolve the calcium with acid and extract fats within, feeding on what's left of the giant that once swam freely. Scientists still debate where these worms came from, whether they evolved specifically for whale falls or adapted from shallower relatives after the first cetaceans died and sank eons ago. Either way, they're patient heirs to each descent. You float above the scene, strangely comforted by the quiet order of it. There's no waste here, no cruelty, no hurry. The deep sea has perfected recycling long before humans built their first compost heap. Further along the plain, faint ridges appear. Hydrothermal vents spouting black clouds into the freezing water. They look like chimneys built by minerals that precipitate out of superheated fluid. Inside, the temperature can reach 400 degrees Celsius, yet the water doesn't boil under this immense pressure. These vents are chemical oases, releasing hydrogen sulfide and metals into the sea, feeding entire ecosystems that don't depend on sunlight at all. You drift closer, warmth faintly tickling your skin, even through the cold. Around the vents, colonies of tube worms sway gently white as ivory-red plumes extended like flowers. They have no mouths or digestive systems. Instead, bacteria living inside them convert toxic vent chemicals into nutrients. It's symbiosis taken to an extreme, a living partnership between chemistry and biology. Scientists believe life on Earth may have begun in places just like this, in the mineral pores of ancient hydrothermal vents, where heat chemistry and pressure created the first spark of metabolism. You gaze at the glowing towers and wonder if this is what the beginning of life looked like. Not gentle or warm, but fierce, alien, and strangely beautiful. A faint chuckle escapes your lips. And we thought it all started in a pond, you whisper. Somewhere a distant shrimp clicks disapprovingly. Beyond the black smokers lies another mystery. Cold seeps where methane and hydrogen sulfide bubble up from the seafloor. Around them thrive mussels, clams, and strange tube worms, all relying on chemosynthesis instead of photosynthesis. The very concept feels upside down. Ecosystems without sunlight, powered by rocks and gas. It's like discovering a parallel Earth hidden inside our own. You run your fingers through the faint current. Even here, amid poison and pressure, there's movement, warmth, and life. It feels like the ocean's way of whispering survival isn't optional, it's instinct. You notice odd patterns carved into the silt, intricate spirals and ridges like crop circles. Scientists once puzzled over these markings until they discovered the culprits, pufferfish deep-sea architects that build elaborate nests to attract mates. They spend days crafting perfect symmetrical patterns, using their fins only for currents to erase them later. A fleeting work of art made purely for love. You can't help but grin. Even at the bottom of the world, someone's trying to impress someone else. You settle near one of the vents, watching the smoke rise. It's mesmerizing, like watching the Earth exhale. Every plume carries minerals from the planet's molten heart into the ocean, creating new rock formations that build the seafloor itself. The deep isn't just a graveyard. It's a factory slowly reshaping the world molecule by molecule. The pressure hums around you, an almost musical vibration. You think of how many creatures live their whole lives here, never knowing sunlight or stars, yet existing in perfect balance. Their world is dark but not empty, harsh but not cruel. It's patient, cyclical, endlessly creative. A sudden flash in the corner of your vision. A small octopus glides from behind a rock. It's Dumbo octopus, named for the flaps on its head that look like ears. It hovers gracefully, moving as if it's performing a slow underwater ballet. With one flick, it drifts upward into the black plume, vanishing in a puff of mineral smoke. You watch, smiling softly, as if the ocean just bowed after a quiet performance. The realization hits you again. This isn't a place of monsters, but of miracles. The deep doesn't roar or rage. It hums, it breathes, it waits. And you, for a moment, are part of that waiting. You drift further along the abyssal plain, past the chimneys of heat, and into a quieter stretch of the deep. The seafloor smooths out again, like an endless midnight desert. The black smokers fade behind you, and in their place comes a softer glow, a pale shimmer, almost like moonlight, filtering through fog. You soon realize it isn't light from above, but from below. Tiny pinpoints glint beneath a layer of translucent sediment. You kneel closer. Yes, bioluminescent bacteria scattered across the mud like stars buried just beneath the surface. Each one flickers faintly, responding to chemical traces in the water. This living carpet is the ocean's quietest art, so faint you'd miss it if you blinked too fast. You can almost hear the whisper of molecules exchanging signals, a soft Morse code written in blue light. Somewhere in this stillness, you begin to sense the slow pulse of the planet itself. Every few minutes, a tremor, deep, low, and steady, rolls through the ground. It isn't a creature. It's the tectonic heartbeat of the Earth, where molten rock moves silently below. You realize that the abyss is not only alive with animals, but with geology. A restless skin shifting and sighing in slow motion. A faint rumble builds in the distance, followed by a shimmering distortion in the water. You turn toward it instinctively. A small underwater earthquake is taking place miles away. barely detectable except for this trembling echo. The abyss absorbs the sound, softening it, until it feels almost like a lullaby, the planet clearing its throat in its sleep. You smile faintly at the thought. The Earth dreams in magma and pressure, and you're floating through its imagination. Near a small ridge, you spot a cluster of strange white domes. They look like eggs at first, but they're not. You move closer and see the truth. Deep-sea sponges, some larger than a human. Their forms are elegant, almost architectural. Delicate lattices of silica, each cell filtering water for microscopic food. The most beautiful among them are the Venus flower baskets, glass sponges that form intricate cages of crystal. Inside some of these cages, a pair of shrimp lives trapped for life. Scientists have watched these pairs, male and female, grow up inside their sponge prisons, unable to leave once they reach maturity. They live out their lives together, cleaning and feeding the sponge in exchange for shelter. It's both romantic and tragic, a love story that doubles as a lifetime sentence. You whisper softly, "Till death or silica do us part," and can't help but grin at your own terrible joke. As you float away, you notice the temperature dips again and the water thickens with faintly drifting dust. Ahead, faint shadows rise from the sediment. Not rock, not coral, but manganese nodules round metallic stones that litter the abyssal floor. Each one grows millimeter by millimeter, layer by layer, over millions of years. Inside are traces of cobalt, copper, and rare earth metals. The same elements humans now covet for batteries and electronics. There's quiet irony in knowing that the deep sea holds the raw materials for our technology. The glowing screens, the satellites, the music streaming in someone's earbuds right now. And yet to reach them, we'd have to disturb this perfect stillness, crush centuries of patient growth. Scientists still argue whether deep-sea mining can ever be done safely, or if the abyss should remain untouched, its treasures left asleep. You drift over one of the nodules, brushing it gently. It feels cold and perfectly smooth, like time itself solidified. Around it, small creatures crawl. Sea stars, isopods, worms that glow faintly with every movement. Even here, where the seafloor looks barren, every inch is alive. Above you, faint silver shapes flicker. Rat-tail fish and grenadiers, slow swimmers with large eyes and tapering tails. They move like thoughts, lazy and aimless, pausing only to nose at the sediment for food. One hovers near you, unbothered, its face oddly expressionless. Scientists once described them as curious but unenthusiastic, which you decide might be the most relatable personality in the ocean. You let yourself float upward just enough to see more of the plain spread below you. It looks endless, an infinite map of ripples, nodules, and trails. And in the far distance, you spot something that catches your breath, a faint column of shimmering dust rising toward the surface. You glide closer. It's not a vent, not smoke. It's movement. A benthic storm stirred up by a distant current. As you approach, the water thickens with clouds of silt. Every disturbance down here takes ages to settle. These storms can last for months, drifting across miles of sea floor, redistributing nutrients like a slow, silent weather system. In their path, filter feeders flourish. Behind them, calm returns. The abyss even has its own version of rain and wind. Just slower, quieter, and infinitely more patient. You pause in the middle of the storm, surrounded by particles of glittering matter, each one falling and rising like dust motes in a sunbeam that no longer exists. You think of snow globes, those little glass worlds that people shake for comfort. The deep sea, it seems, makes its own. As the storm passes, the visibility clears, and you notice something almost absurdly out of place. A bright yellow object half buried in the silt. You swim closer, half expecting treasure, but it's not gold. It's a rubber duck. You blink. Somewhere, somehow, one of those famous drifting bathtub toys from a shipping spill decades ago has made it all the way here. You laugh softly, bubbles curling upward. Even at the bottom of the world, humanity leaves little jokes for itself. That laughter fades into quiet again, replaced by the faint hum of distance. Water moving in massive, slow currents, unseen but unstoppable. These deep currents circle the globe, connecting every ocean basin like the planet's bloodstream. The one beneath you, the Antarctic bottom current, carries cold water thousands of miles north, feeding and cooling the world in a cycle older than civilization itself. You're drifting in the literal pulse of the planet. You close your eyes, letting the sensation surround you. The water moves ancient and gentle, whispering through the folds of time. When you open your eyes again, you see the ground drop away ahead, a shadow swallowing shadows. The plain gives way to a cliff, and beyond it, the start of something even deeper, the trench itself. You've reached the threshold of the abyss's final descent. You hover at the edge of the trench, staring into a drop so deep, it almost feels like the ocean has been turned inside out. The seafloor before you doesn't simply slope, it vanishes. One heartbeat, there's ground beneath you. The next, nothing but a falling void. The trench yawns downward like a colossal scar in the planet's skin. This is the Hadal Zone, named after Hades, the realm of the unseen, the unlit, the utterly unhurried. Less than 1% of the ocean floor lies here, yet it holds some of the greatest mysteries Earth has ever kept. The depth before you, 11,000 meters, give or take. The pressure, more than 1,000 atmospheres, enough to crush a car to the size of a suitcase. You pause and let that sink in. If you were really here, you probably wouldn't survive this, so maybe it's better to stay in the dream. The trench walls are steep folded layers of rock, carved by tectonic plates colliding for millions of years. Every few meters, faint ledges appear home to clusters of pale anemones and small amphipods. The water is thicker now, more like dark glass than liquid. Even sound feels sluggish, each heartbeat echoing like a drum in syrup. You begin your descent following a narrow path along the wall. Bioluminescent specks drift beside you, tiny as dust motes moving upward against gravity. They seem to rise on invisible thermals, flickering softly, as though defying the weight of the world. Halfway down, something glides past your shoulder, transparent, slow, delicate. You look closer. It's a snailfish, one of the few vertebrates known to survive at these depths. Its body looks too fragile for reality, translucent skin, no scales, almost no bones. It moves effortlessly as if made of the water itself. These fish have antifreeze-like molecules in their blood, flexible enzymes that refuse to collapse under pressure. Their skeletons would crumble in air, but down here they're perfect. Scientists still argue whether there's a true limit to life's tolerance. If there's a final point, where even evolution says, all right, that's enough. So far, the snailfish is the champion. You nod, impressed. You win this one, jelly pancake. As you continue downward, the trench narrows again. The darkness seems thicker, but it isn't hostile. It's serene, like velvet wrapping around you. Occasionally, you glimpse threads of life along the wall, glassy worms waving like tiny dancers, brittle stars clinging upside-down shrimp darting between fissures. Some shimmer faintly in colors that don't quite have names, violet, green, blue, gold hues that would vanish under sunlight. You pause near a crevice and find a cluster of small bubbles escaping from the rock methane seeps. Around them, colonies of bacteria mats glow faintly, feeding on gas that would poison most other life. The bacteria sustain small amphipods and isopods that crawl through the ooze, forming a self-contained ecosystem on the side of a cliff no one has ever seen. It's like stumbling upon a secret garden that grows in pure darkness. A low groan rumbles through the water. It's tectonic movement again. One plate grinding slowly beneath another, generating earthquakes that sometimes shake the ocean itself. You imagine how small the sound must be compared to the force it represents. Down here, continents whisper to each other. You stop to rest at a small rocky shelf, noticing faint grooves on the surface trails left by creatures moving slowly over centuries. Nothing rushes here. Even the smallest decisions, where to feed, where to rest, might take days. You wonder what time even means at this depth. Far below, a faint gleam catches your eye. It's not bioluminescence, not natural at all. You descend toward it, carefully passing through thicker layers of silt. The gleam becomes clearer metal. You blink, half expecting wreckage. And yes, that's exactly what it is, a fragment of a deep-sea probe, crumpled and silent. The nameplate still clings to its hull letters, half erased by time. You brush away sediment and grin. Humans have left another signature, half curiosity, half arrogance, on a world that never asked to be explored. You can almost hear the narrator in your mind. We sent machines into the deep, and the ocean swallowed them like dreams. Yet even this debris has become home. A small white crab scuttles along the broken rim, cleaning algae from the metal. A translucent sea cucumber rests inside what used to be a camera housing. The deep, patient as ever, has already turned this wreck into habitat. The trench narrows again, forming a deep, vertical chute. You feel the current strengthen, drawing downward, pulling you gently toward the floor of the world. The walls shimmer faintly with films of microbial life, glowing like ghostly moss. It's as if the Earth's inner skin has a pulse. A tiny point of light appears below, a soft green glow like a candle. You follow it until the shape becomes clear, another snailfish hovering over an almost flat basin. The Challenger, deep, the lowest known point on Earth's surface, 11 kilometers beneath the waves. You made it. It's quieter than silence itself. Even your heartbeat feels hesitant to exist. The floor is smooth, almost featureless fine clay, undisturbed except for small ripples made by invisible currents. You kneel, hand brushing the sediment. It's softer than dust, older than continents, a mixture of everything that has ever died above you. A single amphipod hops across the surface, luminous under your light. It's small, unremarkable, yet it represents something extraordinary, the persistence of life at the absolute edge. No light crushing weight, freezing cold, and still it moves. You watch it crawl away until it vanishes into a faint puff of sediment. Then you realize how profoundly still you feel, like being suspended in eternity, surrounded by the quiet pulse of the planet's deepest breath. For a long time, you stay there. You don't speak. You don't even think. You just listen to pressure, to silence, to existence. Finally, the current shifts, nudging you upward again, slow and deliberate. The trench begins to fade beneath you, replaced once more by drifting clouds of marine snow. As you rise, you realize you're carrying a piece of the abyss with you. Not physically, but in the slow rhythm that settled inside your chest. The rhythm of something patient and ancient. The rhythm of Earth dreaming beneath its own oceans. You begin your slow ascent from the trench, rising through the layers of silence as if through memory. The walls fall away behind you, swallowed again by darkness, and what was once oppressive now feels strangely protective. The pressure lessens molecule by molecule. You can almost sense your body remembering what it's like to be light again. Above, a faint shimmer begins to spread, the first ghost of reflected light from distant life forms. You pass through a drifting curtain of snow, the endless fall of organic dust that never stops. Bits of plankton shells, scales the remains of a jellyfish's dinner, 1,000 tiny lives that settled here and became something new. You breathe slower, matching their pace. Somewhere nearby, a soft pulse of light appears, then another and another. You're entering one of the deep pelagic mid-layers, sometimes called the midnight zone, though that term feels too harsh. It isn't just night here. It's a dream of night full of flickering signals and quiet creatures that never sleep. A small lanternfish swims past your hand, its flank glowing with rows of perfect dots like runway lights. Each species arranges them differently, a secret Morse code of the abyss. Some scientists think these light patterns help identify mates. Others think they confuse predators. Still others argue that they're both right, or maybe no one is. The ocean loves its contradictions. The lanternfish turns upward and joins a slow procession of others, a vertical migration that happens every single night. It's the largest mass movement of animals on the planet, and it happens invisibly while most humans are brushing their teeth. Billions of creatures rise from the deep to feed in the richer layers above, then retreat again before dawn. It's the planet's quiet heartbeat. You find that thought comforting. Life that pulses in time with a turning Earth. Something larger moves behind you, silent and unhurried. You turn, and a siphonophore drifts into view. It's not one animal, but many. A colony, each unit a specialist, some for feeding, some for movement, some for defense. Together, they form a single, elegant body that can stretch longer than a blue whale. It looks like a ribbon of starlight curling through the dark, trailing a soft blue glow. It moves with deliberate grace, its transparency revealing delicate internal filaments like nerves of light. You find yourself whispering, "You're beautiful," and for a moment, it feels like it hears you. Then it tilts slightly, coils, and drifts away. Every few meters upward, a new species appears, each stranger than the last. A hatchetfish flashes silver, its body thin as a coin. A vampire squid unfurls its webbed arms, showing the inside lined with tiny light organs. A defensive ballet of sparkle and shadow. Scientists still debate whether the vampire squid is truly a predator or something else entirely. A scavenger maybe, or a collector of drifting debris. Whatever it is, it's mastered the art of being still. You notice something almost philosophical in that. Down here, survival often means moving less, shining softly, blending perfectly. The opposite of everything humans try to do. The water grows slightly warmer as you ascend. Somewhere far above, hydrothermal vents pump gentle plumes of heat that mix with cold currents. The flow carries the scent of minerals, sulfur, iron salt, a kind of oceanic incense. You imagine it curling through the water like smoke, feeding unseen bacteria that bloom in slow motion. You pass a small swarm of jellyfish so delicate They seem more like ghosts of themselves than living creatures. Each pulse of their bells is a tiny miracle of physics, contracting, relaxing, drifting. Simple, efficient, timeless. One brushes your hand, leaving a faint phosphorescent trace that lingers before fading. There's something deeply peaceful about realizing how much of this world survives by drifting. No ambition, no aggression, just movement with the current waiting for opportunity. You exhale slowly, thinking maybe there's a lesson hidden in that. Then, out of the darkness, something appears that breaks the rhythm. A sudden flicker of hard white light, artificial. You squint and realize it's another human visitor, an ROV, a remotely operated vehicle. Its cameras turn scanning methodically. The mechanical arms move with a kind of underwater ballet, careful not to disturb too much. You float beside it, unseen, watching the bright beam slice through the blackness. The ROV pauses near a drifting jellyfish, studies it, then retreats. You can almost feel the scientists watching from a control room miles above, their excitement bleeding through the data cables. Some people criticize deep-sea exploration, say it's intrusive, greedy human arrogance at work again. Maybe. But as you watch the robot hover lights flickering like nervous eyes, you sense something else too, reverence. Curiosity, that unquenchable need to understand what lies beneath. You remember that even the term abyss once meant bottomless. Ancient philosophers thought it was infinite. Now we know it has a floor, and yet, knowing that doesn't make it less mysterious. It only deepens the wonder. Your light dims as the ROV fades upward, leaving you again in pure darkness. For a moment, you're tempted to follow, but you decide to linger a little longer. You want to remember this pace, this hush. The current shifts again, carrying you past a vertical wall where plankton gather in a shimmering layer. Each cell glows faintly, forming a diffuse curtain of light that stretches for kilometers. This is the deep scattering layer, a living mirror that confuses sonar and hides whole migrations of fish. It moves up and down with the sun, following the faintest cues of brightness. You move through it slowly, the light breaking into ribbons around you. Every motion sends tiny sparks spiraling outward like walking through an endless night of fireflies. You stretch out a hand, and the ocean answers in silent glitter. Somewhere far above, a faint shimmer of true blue appears, the first sign of the upper world. You've climbed through darkness, through silence, through an empire of pressure, and now the weight begins to ease. As you continue upward, you realize how deep the abyss still feels inside you. Even as the light grows, even as sound returns, the memory of stillness lingers like a second heartbeat. Slower, quieter, wiser. Maybe that's what the abyss really gives you, not answers, but a rhythm. A reminder that beneath everything noisy and bright, there's always an ancient hush waiting patiently for you to remember it. You drift through that faint blue shimmer, and for the first time in what feels like forever, light surrounds you. Not the cold, ghostly kind that flickers from a siphonophore or lanternfish, but real sunlight scattered and softened by miles of seawater. It feels strange, almost too bright, as if your eyes have forgotten what color means. You break into the upper mesopelagic zone where the light is dim but persistent. Here the sea becomes an endless watercolor wash, slate blue fading to silver shapes dissolving into motion. Above you, the ceiling of the world glows faintly, the last layer before air. Below, the dark abyss still waits like a patient shadow that never truly leaves. You linger caught between two worlds. The creatures here seem caught too, travelers of twilight. Long-bodied bristlemouths with needle teeth drift lazily, their bodies flashing dim Morse code glimmers. They are the most numerous vertebrates on the planet, though most people have never seen one. Scientists estimate there may be hundreds of trillions of them in the ocean. Imagine that a universe of tiny glowing mouths in a layer no one ever visits. One of them passes close, its eyes reflecting the faint blue glow above. You think about how it spends its entire life chasing the edge of darkness, never seeing the surface, yet always sensing it's there. A weirdly poetic existence, like living forever in the hour before dawn. Not far away, a squid propels itself forward with delicate precision. It changes color in bursts, like breathing in light. One moment ruby red, the next ghost white. These color shifts aren't just camouflage, they're language. Messages in hue and pulse, sentences made of shimmer. Scientists still argue whether squid use these signals to express emotion or just instinct. Maybe both. Maybe there's no difference down here. You rise a little more, passing through streams of suspended plankton. They glow faintly in the sunlight like golden dust caught in water. The warmth here is subtle but unmistakable. After the cold of the trench, it feels almost like touching memory. Then something big moves through the haze, a slow shadow. You turn your head, squint, and see the broad shape of a giant squid, arms outstretched, undulating like living sails. For centuries, sailors swore these creatures were monsters, krakens pulling ships into the depths. In truth, they're shy, quiet, almost gentle in motion. Their eyes, the size of dinner plates, are built not for menace, but for light. The faintest light imaginable. You drift beside it, pacing the rhythm of its pulse. It doesn't flee, but it doesn't linger either. It just exists, steady and unbothered, before fading back into blue shadow. You exhale a long, slow breath you didn't realize you'd been holding. You start to think about how everything in the abyss lives in gradients, of light, of pressure, of patience. Nothing begins or ends sharply. Everything merges. Even now, as you move toward the sun, and the dark still clings softly to your back, a small school of silvery sardines flickers by their synchronized turns, forming ribbons of living metal. You laugh quietly. It's like watching a mirror think. They scatter, regroup, scatter again, always aware of one another, without ever touching. Scientists have tried to model that movement for decades, to teach machines how to do what fish have done naturally for millions of years. So far, the fish are still winning. As you continue upward, a thin rhythmic hum fills the water. It's not mechanical, it's biological. A choir of humpback whales far above, singing through layers of sea. Their songs travel for miles, bending and warping with the currents. You feel it more than hear it, a deep, slow vibration in your bones. You close your eyes, letting it wash over you. Some of those songs may be echoes from hours ago or even days. Whales use sound as a kind of memory, a map of time. They can sense temperature layers, sea mounts, and even the presence of other whales through these sonic landscapes. It's communication as geography. Scientists still debate what the songs mean, but maybe they don't mean anything the way human words do. Maybe they just are. Pure existence turned into sound. You rise through the last few hundred meters. The light becomes clearer, whiter, sharper. You can finally make out the faint glitter of the surface far above. It ripples like a moving mirror, scattering shards of sky. After so much darkness, it feels surreal. Too bright, too shallow, too easy. You almost hesitate to reach for it. But the current insists. You follow it upward, feeling the temperature rise with every breath. Tiny jellyfish bump gently against your skin, their bells pulsing in sync with your heartbeat. The sound of the whales fades, replaced by the hush of the upper world. That soft hiss of motion, of sunlight on water. Then suddenly you break through. The surface folds around you, and for the first time the world above greets you. Air, wind, distant gulls, the low hum of waves meeting sky. You float there for a long time, eyes closed, letting the brightness settle. Your ears ring from the silence left behind. You feel both impossibly small and quietly infinite. A single breath of life suspended between surface and abyss. And yet, as you lie there, you realize something. The deep isn't gone. It's inside you now. That rhythm you found, that slow, unbothered heartbeat of the earth, it hums quietly behind your ribs. You could live on land under sun and noise and urgency, and still carry that calm trench with you wherever you go. You glance once more below. The blue fades, deepens, becomes indigo again. You know it's waiting, patient, eternal humming beneath all human stories. You smile, whispering to yourself, "See you next dream." The surface shimmers, a soft breeze sighs across the water, and you close your eyes one last time, letting the ocean cradle you between the two worlds. One bright one, endless, both quietly alive. The sunlight rests against your face, now a gentle warmth that feels almost unreal after so much time in darkness. You float there, half awake, half adrift, the line between dream and waking as thin as the surface tension of the sea itself. Every ripple that passes under your body feels like a whisper from below. The slow, steady breath of the planet reminding you that you've been somewhere few will ever imagine clearly. Below you, the water fades into sapphire, then navy, then finally into that familiar black where the abyss still waits. You can almost see its outline, though you know it's thousands of meters down, the ghost of depth echoing behind your eyes. It isn't frightening anymore. It feels like home in a strange way, a kind of calm that refuses to hurry. A small school of mackerel glides past their scales, catching the light like silver threads. Each flash is a heartbeat of the sea. They dart, vanish, return. The surface world is alive with motion again, the dance of energy and hunger, life and light. Yet as you watch, it feels softer than before. You've slowed down. Everything has. A sea turtle rises beside you, breaking the surface for air. Its face looks ancient, worn smooth by time and current. You drift with it for a moment, both of you breathing in rhythm. The turtle blinks once slow and deliberate, before diving again into blue. Its shell disappears like a dream, sinking back into sleep. You close your eyes and let yourself drift too, just below the surface, where the sound of waves turns into a steady heartbeat. Your own. The echo of the ocean's pulse has synchronized with yours so perfectly that it's hard to tell where one ends and the other begins. As you float, you think about everything you've seen. The abyssal plains like midnight deserts, the hydrothermal vents glowing like ghostly forges, the impossible lives that thrive under 1,000 atmospheres of pressure. And you remember how life there doesn't fight the darkness. It uses it. The light isn't gone, it's just quieter, hidden in strange forms. Scientists still argue over how deep life truly goes. whether microbes exist far beneath the ocean crust, where heat and stone blur into magma. Some think there's no end to it, that the line between alive and not yet alive might be far deeper than we've ever guessed. But as you lie here breathing the surface air again, that argument feels almost tender. Maybe we don't need to find the limit. Maybe it's enough just to know that there's always more. A soft current nudges you toward the open sea. The waves cradle you, rising and falling in long, drowsy rhythms. Above, the sky begins to fade from white to soft gold, dawn or perhaps dusk. You've lost track, but that feels right. The ocean doesn't measure time the way we do. The sun shimmers low on the horizon, and for a moment it looks like a reflection of the hydrothermal vents far below. Another glowing eye watching over the water. You smile faintly. Up there, down there, it's all light trying to find its way through darkness. The gulls circle lazily overhead, their cries distant, softened by the wind. You take one last slow breath and feel it settle deep in your chest, anchoring the calm of the abyss inside you. Let yourself stay here for a moment longer. The waves are gentle tonight, rolling like the slow breathing of the earth itself. Each rise lifts you slightly, each fall lets you sink just enough to feel weightless again. There's no rush now. The world can wait. Down below, the deep is still humming, slow, quiet, endless. The life that glows in the dark still flickers softly, and the currents that have traveled for centuries are still moving, weaving stories no one will ever hear. If you listen closely, you can almost hear them now. The low hum of tectonic plates shifting, the faint whisper of whale song curling through miles of water, the gentle tap of tiny creatures stirring in the sediment. All of it blending into one continuous, eternal lullaby. You breathe in, you breathe out. You can almost feel the pressure of the deep wrapping around you again, not crushing, but holding. A reminder of how strong you are and how small everything noisy and bright can seem compared to the stillness of the abyss. Let your thoughts drift like plankton. Let your body feel suspended in this soft blue quiet. Somewhere far below, the deep remembers you. One more sleepy traveler who came to listen for a while. And up here, the sky mirrors it perfectly vast, calm, and infinite. So rest now. You've already traveled to the bottom of the world and back. You can let go. Let the sea hold you steady, the air fill your lungs, and the hush of the abyss carry you gently towards sleep. Sweet dreams, traveler.